Welcome to The Explainer. The debate over how the world's wealthiest individuals interact with government money is, well, it's incredibly heated. There is a lot of yelling out there. But today, we're doing something a bit different. We are completely stripping away the political noise. Our goal here is to look strictly at the objective financial realities from our source data so we can finally demystify exactly how government support functions at the absolute highest levels of wealth. Glorified welfare recipients. Wow. It's a provocative, heavy-hitting phrase, isn't it? It's an accusation aimed squarely at high-profile figures, and it definitely pulls you right into the center of the political debate. But what does it actually mean when we look past the buzzwords and look at the financial mechanics behind the rhetoric? Are the world's most famous billionaires actually receiving welfare? Or is there maybe an entirely different economic engine at work here? Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The glorified welfare claim, unpacking the political framing.
To really map out the actual mechanisms at play, let's pivot to our first major case study. Case study, Elon Musk, subsidies, credits, and contracts.
$4.9 billion. Just take a second to wrap your head around that. That's the approximate total of government support for Elon Musk's ventures over a 10-year period, according to a 2015 LA Times analysis. When critics scream welfare, this massive pool of money is exactly what they're pointing to. But to actually understand this number, we've got to look under the hood and know what makes up that $4.9 billion. It's not like a giant, oversized check was just handed over to one guy. It's more like a really complex web of financial tools. We've got federal loans and direct tax credits for Tesla and SolarCity. We've got state grants, which are basically designed to incentivize building massive factories in specific zip codes. Interestingly enough, a huge chunk of this support comes in the form of EV tax credits. That's money that actually went to everyday consumers to incentivize them to buy Tesla vehicles. And then, and this is a crucial distinction, fundamentally different from direct subsidies, we have billions in NASA contracts for SpaceX. Now, these weren't handouts. These were actual government contracts paying for research, development, and launch services. And this brilliantly illustrates the two totally different ways this exact same data is interpreted. On one side, supporters champion investment and innovation. They point out that SpaceX drastically cut the cost of space launches for the US government, and Tesla basically forced the entire automotive industry to take electric vehicles seriously. They argue the government got an absolutely incredible return on its investment. Critics, on the flip side, decry this as corporate welfare. They argue that highly profitable companies are swallowing up taxpayer money, which basically gives them an insurmountable advantage over smaller competitors who just can't secure that same level of government backing. Let's shift gears to our second high-profile case study. Case study, Donald Trump, tax cuts and bailouts. Donald Trump's projects and businesses have utilized some very distinct policy tools over the years. First up, the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which significantly lowered both corporate and personal tax rates. We also see the utilization of emergency programs like COVID PPP loans for his businesses, as well as farm bailouts and some really complex depreciation breaks that are just super common in the real estate world. Finally, going way back, early Trump Organization projects relied heavily on state-level tax abatements and zoning breaks in New York and New Jersey. These are basically legal tools cities use to attract massive real estate developments. Just like with our previous case study, there's a really stark divide here. Supporters offer the defense of legal competitiveness. They argue that tax cuts apply to everyone, and businesses are simply using government-designed legal incentives to stay competitive and build projects. It's just playing by the rules of the game as written. Critics entirely counter that with the argument of unfair advantage. They point out that billionaires and massive developers utilize a wildly complex tax code to pay lower effective tax rates than the average working-class citizen. For them, this highlights a deep systemic inequality. Let's do a quick objective palate cleanser to clarify the language. Welfare versus policy incentives, defining the terms. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the fascinating funding divide. Look at the strict definitions. Welfare is almost universally used in policy to mean direct financial aid for low-income individuals to secure basic human needs. But when governments allocate funds to companies or wealthy individuals, the actual policy terms used are subsidies, tax credits, and government contracts. The political framing uses the word welfare to elicit a strong emotional response, but the technical reality here is a system of strategic economic incentives. Now we've got to look at the whole picture, the tax reality, the other side of the ledger. Over $1.2 billion. To put that into perspective, that is the amount of federal tax paid by Tesla alone in the single year of 2023. This perfectly showcases the incredibly complex, dual nature of corporate finance. A company can absolutely receive massive subsidies on the front end to build factories and develop tech, and then turn around and pay over $1 billion in taxes on the back end once they become highly profitable. And the exact same duality exists in real estate. Despite utilizing numerous tax breaks, depreciation schedules, and abatements to lower their tax burden, disclosed records show that Trump organizations and Trump personally have still paid 8-figure tax bills. We're talking tens of millions of dollars in certain individual years. So the ledger is rarely ever completely one-sided. Let's move to and see how this builds into our conclusion: investment or corporate handout, the synthesis.
So the crucial point is this. The reality of the math is pretty much indisputable. The money moves exactly as we've outlined today, and both figures built wealth partly through legal access to government policy. Whether you label this entire system unfair corporate welfare or the strategic use of incentives, well, that doesn't depend on the math. It depends entirely on your personal economic philosophy. Do you believe the government should act kind of like a venture capitalist, spurring industry and development? Or do you believe a level playing field without top-heavy intervention is paramount?
Which leaves us with this final question for you. Based on the actual realities of how these policies work, should billionaires and massive corporations get absolutely zero government support? Or is it a fair trade-off if it successfully creates massive job growth and pushes technology forward?